They elect people in position of power with the know-how, experience, and confidence required to tackle what management scientists call big problems. Such problems can't be solved by a single command. They have causes that seem incomprehensible and solutions that seem uncertain, and they often require companies to transform the way they do business. Organizations around the globe are looking to improve their leadership style, but it can be challenging to find the right one. Join us for this exciting session and watch our experts share their valuable inputs on how to choose the right leadership style for your team and what is the best way to challenge all practices, mitigate risk, and scale your organization and communicate effectively. Once again, as always, HRAI welcomes you all to the session Connecting the Dot, Strategic Leadership, the Global Content of Leadership. To know more about HRAI and our event, I would like to request all the participants to visit the link and details which is posted in the chat window. Towards the end, before Q&A session, we will be running a short poll. So we'd request all the participants to give your valuable feedback on the session. It's now time to virtually meet our esteemed panel members for today's webinar. I'll start with Mr. Sushil Tripathi, Head Human Capital, Goldie Solar Company. Very warm welcome, Mr. Sushil. We are very happy to have you for this session. I'd like to introduce you to all our participants. Mr. Sushil has more than 2 decades of work experience in various domains of HR field and has shown excellence and have been successfully playing the role of organization creator by organization design, role design required behavior modeling with the development of policies, procedure, and system development with intention of organizational goal achievement. Nurturer, developer of organizational capability and organization with its constitutes like people, process, system, values, culture, and required skills and talent by rewarding and recognizing high potential and adapting differentiated approach. Further, his stint as a HR professional has also seen acting as an instrumental in correcting or modifying of ill and odd practices, behaviors, system or architecture, and people, hampering the growth of organization by changing, modifying, reinforcing, and sometimes, if required, negatively enforcing. He has led many change initiatives by transforming the culture of organization and build leadership pipelines by working meticulously on succession planning. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm just doing all the formalities.
Yeah.
So I require certain sort of.
You
yes.
Can you mute yourself? Okay, it's done. So sorry for this inconvenience. I would now like to welcome our next panel member, Mr. Vikas Sheth, Country Head, Milestone Inc. Once again, a very warm welcome, Mr. Vikas. Very much happy to have you once again on the Connecting the Dots series. I would like to introduce Vikas as Vikas is a programmer and a marketer with an experience of 14 years who loves building products and innovative business models. He is passionate about impacting people's life. A country head India at Milestone Inc. Next big thing in Martech. He is an avid traveler and he has actually traveled more than 20 plus countries across 5 continents. A Martech enthusiast with an entrepreneurial mindset. You can also follow him on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Now, our next panel member is Ms. Sharda Sundar, founder, Sara Life Consulting. I'm very much pleased to introduce all the speakers. We have the different, across the industry, we have found a very good speaker. So very much excited for this session. I'll introduce Ms. Sharda as she is an independent director, advisory board member, and executive coach. She is the founder of Sara Life Consulting that guides the people to their best potential. Sharda is a chartered accountant with over 25 years of corporate experience in business management roles. Her areas of expertise span across business strategy and agile execution, consumer insight and engagement, financial management, business fortification, team building and coaching, creativity and innovation. She believes in a judicious mix of right and left brain, head and heart, and holistic living. She is the recipient of Impact's 50 Most Influential Women in Marketing, Media, and Advertising 2015, an Exemplary Women Leadership Achievement Award from World Women Leadership Congress 2016. She is a published author of the books which are Silver Sparrow 2018 and Poetry in Pandemic 2020 and many other books. You can also follow her on LinkedIn. The link for the same has been shared in the chat window. Okay, now it's time to introduce our moderator, come panel member for today's session, Ms. Sindhu Kalyan Sundaram, founder and Ignite Academy, founder of Ignite Academy and Sarva Happiness. We all know Sindhu very well. We don't need introduction, but I'll be very much happy to introduce Sindhu as she brings rich experience in organizational development and management consulting. Her experience spanned across retail, banking, and financial services, loyalty marketing, FMCG, IT consulting, agriculture, BPO, manufacturing, and engineering, etc. Having worked across India and United Kingdom with GE, Nestle, Infosys, Cognizant, New Look Retailers, Fenian International, she is the founder of Ignite Academy and Sarva Happiness. She helps organizations enable and enhanced employee happiness levels as well as effectiveness. Most importantly, she works in enhancing organization, create a sense of belonging for their people. She has worked with global audiences and culture. Some of the companies she has delivered workshops are Bicon, Aditya Birla, Minex, HCL Technologies, Medico, Larsens and Turbo, L&T Valves, Seisha Care, Tesco, and LG Equipments, and many more. She holds a postgraduate degree in marketing and information technology from SP Jain Institute of Management and Research from Mumbai. Once again, I welcome all the panel members, all the speakers. Looking forward to learn a lot of things from you. Over to you, Sindhu.
Thank you, Nehali. Thank you, HRAI. A wonderful, warm welcome to all of you and the panelists. It is just a beautiful, rainy monsoon afternoon. And as I just stepped out today, I realized that life is slowly getting back to normal. And like Nehali said, the festive season is around the corner. There's a lot of laughter. There's a lot of joy. Because over the past 1 year, whenever I've been on the panel, we've been talking about fluidity, adaptability, resilience quite a few times. And today, for a change, we're now moving into how life is coming back to normal and what does it take from people, what does it take from organizations, teams, employees, customers, stakeholders to go ahead and embrace. And today we talk about a very oft repeated term, strategic leadership, but from a very different context. We've probably studied it in our B schools, we've learned these jargons, we've spoken about it in our conference rooms. But today we're going to talk about strategic leadership from the perspective of leaders from the perspective of values, from the perspective of opportunities and employees. So once again, warm welcome to all of you and the panelists. Let me directly jump into the panel discussion and ask Vikas. We were talking a lot about strategic leadership, but currently in the current scenario, Vikas, what do you think are the key skills that a strategic leader must have?
So that's a very good question, Sindhu, and thank you so much, HRAI team and everyone, for having me here on the panel today. And again, like Sindhu said, strategic leadership is in sort of a buzzword for a very long time. I don't quite necessarily think that the strategic leadership is going to change in current times or in future or in the past. From my perspective, it always revolves around one and only one thing, which is customers. Customer centricity is the most important aspect of being a strategic leader. Having said that, it's a very broad bucket. And typically, I would divide that broad bucket of customer centricity into 6 different smaller buckets. And as a leader, whether you are a strategic or any other type of a leader, the very first thing of a leader is to establish the vision of the organization, which again should always be revolving around the customer and the problem that you're solving for the customer. That's the most important part for being a strategic leader, wherein you need to have a vision which really inspires people and which really pushes people to go to the next level. So that's the first point of setting the vision. The next important aspect is not just setting the vision, but actually setting the goals to achieve that vision. And more importantly, at a leadership level, even important aspect is to align goals across different departments. A lot of times what happens is you have got so many different teams and so many disparate goals, and which has no relation to vision whatsoever. So aligning that vision across different teams and making sure that whether you're leading a 10-member team or a 100-member team or a 100,000-member team, that becomes a very crucial aspect to be a very strategic leader. Now, call it curse or advantage of being a leader. There are always going to be change into whatever you feel is going to be needed by the customer. So anticipating the change for me is the next very important skill set of being a strategic leader. So always making sure that whatever we are delivering to the customers, is it always good enough? Are you expecting or anticipating any change in that? And really making sure that if you anticipate any change, aligning your goals, aligning your vision according to that is extremely important. Next piece, the fourth bucket, from my perspective, is even more crucial. Are you challenging your teams enough or not? So being able to challenge your teams, and again, Sindhu spoke about B schools, wherein we learned very fancy words like BHAG, right? Big, hairy, audacious goals. So I think having that, challenging mindset, making sure that you are able to push the team towards solving the right problem and solving really good moonshots, which really helps you go to the next level, is equally important. A lot of times we end up taking goals which we feel are comfortable and puts us in a very comfort zone. So challenging your teams from that perspective is equally important. And again, whatever I'm saying, it almost feels like is applicable to any kind of leadership. And I totally agree with that. I don't think so. Being a strategic leader means you need to have, wear different clothes or have a different language. So it again, for me, is a very mundane and boring 6 different kind of things. So moving on, the next important piece of being a strategic leader is to have a learning mindset. The world that we live in is changing very rapidly, specifically the world where I build products. I'm into the sort of a world of digital marketing, wherein Google, Facebook's, and so many other players change the rules of the game almost every other day or every other month, right? So you really have to be adaptive and making sure that your teams are learning continuously. So continuous learning is extremely important. No matter what I have learned in my graduation or on my B school, things are evolving so rapidly that if you're not learning, then you are probably out of the game. And last but not the least, and from my perspective, the most important skill set is bias for action. I can create fancy PPTs, I can create amazing models, I can create amazing theories, I can give amazing speech. But if I'm not acting on that, all of what I've just said is going to be useless. So I think the most important skill set for a strategic leader after doing everything, setting the vision, aligning the goals, is to move fast and have a very, very strong bias for action. A lot of times leaders get paralyzed by analysis, right? So we say paralysis by analysis, right? So it's really important to get out of that zone and really, really have a very strong bias for action, and just do it. I think that's the most important skill set from my perspective, if you really are a strategic leader, from that perspective. So I think, just to sum it up, vision, aligning the goals, anticipating the change, challenging the teams, having the learning mindset, and a very, very strong bias for action. These are the primary skill sets for a strategic leader in the current age.
Thank you, Vikas. I would say that's a fantastic start to the discussion, especially the 3 points that you spoke amongst everything, which was challenging, anticipating change, and a bias for action, and of course learning. So when I actually look at all these 4 points particularly, I also see that it is very important not only for the leader but the entire organization to also have a buy-in, because many times the leader has audacious goals, very passionate, very inspiring, but how does the leader translate his or her vision, passion for the future to the organization, which means even if it calls for challenging, it also calls for acceptance amongst the community with which the leader is working. So thank you, Vikas. And I think that naturally leads a flow to my next question to Sharada. Bringing all these changes, challenging convention, how can leaders prepare teams and organizations to go along with the flow in these times?
Okay, thank you, Sindhu. And I'd like to thank Nihali for the wonderful introduction of all of us. So I think, Vikas really outlined the key attributes. And coming to your question on how leaders have to prepare themselves, their teams, and their organizations for the future, if we look around, if we think that the current business place is dynamic, the future is going to be even more dynamic. Yeah. And given the changing technology and digital innovations that are happening around the world, which is, a global marketplace for us now, and a customer who has everything on his fingertips through his gadgets and mobile, right? So that's the pace at which we are going to be, looking at our customers, changing preferences, changing brands, changing loyalties, and having such a global marketplace to choose from. Now, to cater to businesses in this kind of an environment is not easy. So it becomes, first of all, the most important imperative is for leaders to change themselves. Yeah, so I think it starts from the leader having a transformation journey for himself to become more and more strategic, so that he or she can keep in step with the global shifts that are happening and take advantage of those innovations that are happening and those emerging technologies that are happening, and see, hey, how can I deploy this into my business and get an advantage out of it? Let me stay ahead, right? And let me be more successful in business. So you can do that only if you're able to have the bandwidth to stay strategic. So I do see that the leader starts with a self transformation to focusing more on the strategic piece. And that leads us to then, okay, what happens to the rest of the organization, right? So he needs to free himself, he or she needs to free from repetitive operational focus. And to that, what they have to do is really train and prepare mini leaders in his teams. Yeah, and empower them and inspire them so that there is an agility and an absolute coordination of strategy and implementation and execution, which buys for action again, right? Without that process and those people connecting to make the strategy a reality, you need to create mini leaders, which means that the leaders become coaches. They really create mini leaders within their organization so that you have speed to market. So that's the way you have to start suddenly looking at your talent, at your people, and say that, hey, I want to make mini leaders who are going to run with our strategy and make it reality. That is going to be a sea shift, because from just being implementers of a goal or a sub goal or a KRA, they are going to say now, hey, I own this piece and I'm going to deliver. Yeah, so that's going to be a sea shift that the leader will inspire in his team, and it's mandatory now, because that's the only way you can have agility. Now coming to even the leader and the management side, they have to prepare themselves to being open to change and disruption. Yeah, if the last 2 years have been any evidence, right, there's only been disruption, and people who were open to changing really survived and succeeded, and those who couldn't actually had a problem even staying afloat. So changing the mindsets of right from their own self, which is a leader, to creating an empowered team which is going to take ownership and accountability, is going to kind of create better outcomes. And to answer the last part of your question in terms of how leaders are going to create organizational level changes for the future, I think the leadership team as a collective, they have to become comfortable with accepting change. Yeah, a lot of times people are resisting to say that, hey, I have a 3-year business plan, which is cast so beautifully. We have taken care of all the analytics, we have taken care of all the future possibilities, and we have created this 5-year plan or 3-year plan. And people usually don't like to revisit it unless it's like a catastrophe, right? So I think that shift has to happen in terms of becoming comfortable with change, comfortable to go back to the drawing board and say that, hey, there are some changes happening in the environment, and I want to revisit if my strategy is holding good ground, or is there something that I just have to reevaluate or revisit, or is there a new risk that is looking up and I have to take cognizance of that and change or tweak the way my strategies are going to pan out. Yeah, so I think as a leadership team, if they're nimble, if they're open to change, and most importantly, if they're looking at possibly different ways of working. And when I say this, Sindhu, I mean, how open are organizations to say that in a moving world, let me seek collaborative partnerships where I minimize my risks and maximize my success. So a bit of very conscious, careful outsourcing of, let's say, the tech part, because then you are not stuck with a legacy system which is going to become defunct in the next 2 months. Yeah, so I think these kind of open challenge to the self to say that, hey, how open I'm to change around me is really going to be getting organizations, leaders, and its people future ready. That's what I would think.
Those were beautiful nuggets of wisdom, Sharda. I mean, lot of wisdoms strewn around, starting with changing oneself, which means you're basically saying lead by example. And it's okay to show your vulnerability to your employees rather than being on the pedestal, and embrace all of them together. I also particularly like the fact that you spoke about bringing and coaching in many leaders, so that there are people who act, I would say, brand ambassadors of your strategic leadership. So you're basically bringing them in alignment. That's wonderful. So I'm just reminded of this tiny survey that we did a few months back on employees, and we realized that one of the greatest fears that employees were facing during the pandemic was, how visible am I to my immediate manager? Because everyone's working from home. Sometimes the videos are not on, sometimes the manager's video is not on, the employee's video is not on. And no matter what, they try to bridge the gap, there is still this insecurity of, am I visible? Are my contributions valued? And how is this new scenario going to take forth? And before we realize, we're now back into the hybrid workspace. So when we speak about strategic leadership, there is a lot of focus on embracing employees and bringing them back to the organization. So a slightly different question to you, Sushil. While everyone's focusing on employees, how do you think organizations can still manage to be customer centric now, especially in this scenario when it's important to manage the people at home in the sense the organization. But at the same time, how do you think strategic leadership can focus on bringing that fine balance and still make organizations customer centric?
Good, good. So, very good and powerful questions. I must thank HRAI and fellow co-panelists because they already set the context. But coming directly to the customer centricity point, I would like to add a few very important points which are necessary to comprehend uh, what exactly strategic leadership is all about, and few things which are missing in our discussion. So personally, what I have experienced, I will not take references from books. I have seen organization starts with mission first. So why organization exists? What is the purpose of creating this organization? And from there itself comes the value proposition. Okay, how we are going to serve the customer, or how we are going to create competitive advantage in the market. And it is the role of strategy creation. So if we are going to discuss about strategic leadership, we must comprehend all leaders in the organizations are not strategic. So that is the reason in the introduction itself, we discussed about a leadership style which is related with strategy. So that is the relevance of today's theme. So we must first understand why strategic leadership is important. And to add your research, uh, Gallup and PwC had organized a survey, and they found out across the globe just 8% people are at the strategic level. So their thoughts are just 8% people. So see the amount or the number of people at strategic level. So I will take you from Vikas. So like Vikas started with customer centricity, we must be clear why we are into the business. So finally, at the end of the day, owners, promoters, or the business is concerned about the top line and then bottom line. And how this top line, bottom line is going to come, that is through serving customers in a better way or differentiated manner. So that value should be percolated across the organization. If this is conveyed across the level through mechanism, then only you are going to create customer centricity in the organization. So we talked about customers are the king, customers are always right, they are never wrong. So whatever they are asking, that we have to offer. Who can crook whatever you do, customers are least concerned because they have multiple options available with you. So you have to create a process, system, practices, reward mechanism, performance management system, communication style, role modeling, behavior modeling across your organization, starting from top to bottom. So we'll give you one example. If you are just incentivizing sales numbers without considering how your customers are treated, which kind of experience he or she is having in entire value chain in the process of interacting first touch point to post even sales services. If that is not being taken care of, one thing is sure, customer centricity is not going to develop in your organization. So I would summarize it in a beautiful word. So starting from mission, then vision, values, and very important aspect, culture. So how customers are going to be treated, how customer centricity is going to be defined, what is the meaning of customer for us, how people are going to be rewarded, how people are going to be awarded, how people are going to be given promotion, how they are going to be taken to the next level of their career. If the factors or the parameters are not covering customer aspects there, then one thing is sure, you will reward something, but at the end you are going to get very different approach at the customer level. So for me, if you want to create a customer centricity culture in the organization across the value chain, you have to start actually by defining customer, what is customer centricity, how you have to behave, how you have to deal with customer, what is customer delight. So these must be the part of your competency. So it should be the part of all your HR processes, HR architecture. Then only customer centricity is going to be developed. Yes.
Thank you,
Yes, Sunil.
Sushil. I saw a lot of conviction when you were speaking about that, especially in diversifying the mindset. So basically, you're talking about customer centricity being a part of the leader's mindset and not treating that as a separate vertical or separate part of the culture. It's imbibed as a part of the culture. What you said reminded me of what the former group CEO of Lego was saying. So we all know that Lego is a toy manufacturer, but they also are into education, theme parks. And something interesting that he said was about the fact that Lego does not force these various entities to behave as a part of one corporation. Rather, he says that we look at them as a part of a big ecosystem where there are big trees, there are small trees, some are embryonic. Each one brings its own strength, but together they create this massive energy. And if we have to translate it into a mindset, and that's what strategic leadership also does, irrespective of the kind of businesses or business units that we have. It's about leveraging the strengths of each one of those and then going up to a very wholesome manner. So, Vikas, the question for you then is, how do we bring about this sort of strategic thinking and decision making into the organization culture?
It's a very, very important aspect. I think we can talk about all of this thing, but how do you actually bring it into the overall ecosystem? And whenever someone talks about decision making, I think my first instinct goes back to data, that we as leaders are taking so many different decisions on a daily basis, right? Literally, every meeting or every interaction would require a decision. So I think, and we tend to go towards our past experience, or we tend to go towards what we feel is right, and feeling gets a lot, or a gut feeling gets a lot into the way of decision making. So I think the very first focus for any leader to be strategic has to be a very, very strong bias towards data backed decisions. So no matter what you're doing, I think whenever we always ask questions why and how to any and every decision we are making, and we challenge ourselves on that, I think data-backed decisions would automatically come to the fore. And that for me is the most important aspect to any strategic thinking process or decision-making process. And again, my passion for customer would always be there. So I think the second factor that I consider to really imbibe strategic thinking is be close to your customers. As simple as that, talk to them, right? I think you get more strategies from the customers who are facing problems or pain points than anything else. Any amount of meetings, offsite, strategic leadership meetings you do, or trainings you do, more than anyone else, I think customers will train you the most. So I think just talk to customers and have a very, very laser sharp focus on the competition. I think that will give you a lot more, insight into what kind of strategies you should have for your organization. Third, which is sort of a little bit more internal, but even external as well, having the empathy. If you really want to be a strategic leader, I think you really have to empathize with your employees, customers, and shareholders, all three of them. You have to have that fine balance of having the empathy across the entire ecosystem. And then I think you will be able to create and craft strategies which will really blossom your organization. And last but not the least, for any leadership, I think, and the very first point you made when Sushil was speaking was he was very passionate for whatever he was talking about. I think that's a very, very crucial point as a leader, that you really have to be passionate about what you do. if you're there for the sake of doing the job or earning a salary, I don't think so you can become a very strategic leader. You really have to be passionate about what you do, and more importantly, you have to be able to be influencer in the ecosystem. And I think Sharda talked about this in terms of creating mini leaders in the ecosystem. And that's exactly a very, very big must have to really have so many influencers in the ecosystem if you really want to imbibe strategic thinking and decision making in the ecosystem. So I think those are the very broad categories that I would look at in terms of focusing on the data, really, just talking to customers, and having empathy in the entire ecosystem, and finally, being an influencer in the ecosystem. I think those are the must-haves from my perspective if you really want to imbibe the whole strategic thinking and decision making in the organization.
Wonderful, Vikas. Thank you so much. I think I would probably want Sharada and Sushil also to answer the same question on your 2 cents on how do you think we can imbibe strategic thinking in the organization? Yes, Sharada.
Yes, sir.
Shil, after you.
Okay, thank you. So like I started, just 8% people are acting or playing the role of strategic leadership. So still a lot of confusion is there. So I started with first, why strategy is created. So strategy actually is a game plan to achieve your mission. In terms of portraying beautiful picture, I always start with that beautiful song कि आ चल के तुझे मैं लेके चलूं एक ऐसे गगन के तले जहां गम भी ना हो आंसू भी ना हो बस प्यार ही प्यार पले. So basically what I am trying to tell you, your vision should be very inspiring, motivating. It should offer something which is beneficial, which is fruitful for all the people who are working with your organization, maybe internally or externally. So if that buy-in, like you had also, Sarda touched upon this point, buy-in, and then Vikas also discussed about alignment. So all of these things are going to happen only and when people who are part of your vision, they realize if this is going to be happen or if company is going to achieve this vision or if it is able to execute strategy effectively or efficiently, their lifestyle, their aspirations, their purpose for getting associated with this organization is going to be fulfilled. So the first and foremost, transparency, communication in a simple and effective manner. Everyone who is a part of this journey should be aware about what is strategy for them and how it is going to be assessed, what are the milestones, how they are going to be awarded, evaluated, punished if it is going not to happen. So that's how I believe. Yes.
Thank you, Sushil. Yes, Sharda.
Yeah, I think very interesting comments by both Vikas and Sushil on this. And what I have always seen while working with teams is that inspiration plays a very, very important role in the teams wanting to be part of your strategic vision. Yeah, so I think for both from a leader's perspective, I think it's important to connect the dots for their team, saying that hey, when you do this, this is how you're connecting to the strategic vision. And likewise, when the employees are at it, right, how do they become passionate about what they do is when they see their efforts connecting back to the strategic vision of the organization. So I think it'll be interesting for the leadership team to try and make that extra effort to help connect the dots for their employees to see how valuable they are, how much they're contributing, and and say that every day I do this, there is something going up in the organization because of me. So coming back to Sindhu, your research where you talked about employees want to have a feeling of value, have a visibility, have a sense of pride in what the organization is achieving. So I think this is going to become more and more important. And as we see, the emotional intelligence is going to be the most important trait a leader needs to have as we go forward. And a lot of it depends on how he's able to kind of motivate, empathize, inspire, and largely connect the dots as a leader. Yeah.
Thank you. I think there were three diverse viewpoints to the same question. Just wanted to get your flavor. I'm coming back to Vikas because what you spoke about empathy being a significant component of part of strategic thinking and decision making. So, any quick tips on how leaders can build the culture of empathy in organizations?
I think, and again, it's a very sort of a tough question to answer in terms of building empathy. But to be very honest, I like to keep things simple, right? I think as you grow in the journey of becoming a leader, the most important aspect is to detach problem and the solution, right? What would be the solution? Who would do the solution? Who would implement it? And what the problem is. The moment you detach yourself from the problem statement, the moment you feel that, hey, this is because of me or because of one particular team, the finger pointing starts, and the finger pointing and sort of it gets into the ecosystem, and it really creates a negativity. So I think for me, creating empathy is always detaching the problem and yourself from that. And the moment you come out of that problem and you're not in the middle of the problem, I think you start seeing or empathizing with everyone, including yourself. So I think that I always coach to the leaders I work with that, hey, do not associate yourself with the problem. And then you will start building empathy for you, for your peers, for other teams, and for the customers, right? The moment we see problem as a problem and not we or not us or not people, I think you will be able to do wonderful things with that.
Thank you, Vikas. I'm smiling because, last week I was reading this article by a mindfulness coach. And she was saying, disassociate yourself from the problem and look at it objectively. So I was just smiling. Strategic leadership also means to incorporate mindfulness. And what you said about associating just took me back to what I was reading. But that's wonderful.
And see, the most important aspect, and we call it karmic capitalism in our milestone ecosystem. So what we say is there is a sort of a cycle that if you have happy employees, you will have happy customers. If you have happy customers, you will have happy shareholders. And if you have happy shareholders and happy customers, and you will have amazing profits. Again, amazing profits leads to happy customers. So there is a great cycle that you are able to create with that ecosystem, and that can only happen if there is empathy in the ecosystem.
Very beautifully put. Thank you very much, Vikas. So when we speak about empathy, we're also empathizing with the current situation of what people are going through, right? In their homes, unable to turn on their videos, now coming back, dealing with their insecurities. So basically on the people of the organization. So Sharada, my question is, when we are so people focused, why is the changing facet of the external environment the core of strategic leadership?
Okay, so I think the last 2 years have been enough proof of the fact that when external environments change, even the most successful organizations can be helpless and crumble into loss-making ones, right? So while it's very important to focus internally, be it people, be it your processes and your strategy, to drive the organization goal and vision, it's also become very, very important to create a future-ready organization that can bear the brunt of sharp disruptions, caused by technology, digital innovations, or natural calamities, as we just saw the pandemic. So I believe that the external environment is getting more and more important in a strategic leadership's plate of to-dos. And not only are they uncertain, they're becoming more disruptive. And to tackle this, something very dramatically has to shift within an organization. They need to change to adapt to this external realities. And when I mean change, and I often find this when I talk to people, when I talk to CEOs, when I'm coaching executives, the biggest bottleneck or challenge is changing mindsets. Yeah, so people's mindsets, to saying that, hey, things are going to be very, very different. The external challenges are not going to be easy for us. So I think the leaders have to work on building agility across the critical aspects of strategic decision making processes and people. I think so. Being able to change your mindset to becoming agile in an organization is becoming the most important influences that come to us from an external perspective. Yeah, so I think these two are important, along with the other things that are happening within an organization about care for its people, care for its customers, care for all the stakeholders. And I'm tempted to give you an example of the pandemic, and how the external situation actually changed or became kind of case studies for us to sit and watch and say, hey, which organization is behaving in which way and why, and what are the outcomes of those behaviors, right? So to bring an example from Gujarat, I think Amul, right? When everybody in their respective categories started withdrawing investments or withholding investments, this was one company which went all out and invested and said, let me get all the milk into my industry. And they started preparing to create sachets to be sold digitally. So while everybody was in absolute, let's say, statue form, right? Nobody wanted to do anything. Nobody wanted to take risks or say that what will happen next. Just wait and watch policy. This person went overboard, went took a big risk and made investments, and at the end of it made a lot of return and created a better market share for them in the pandemic. Can you imagine this? So I would think that changing that mindset to external environment, saying that, hey, whatever it is, now I'm not going to be dazed by this. And as a leader, I'm not going to be shying away from saying that, I want to revisit my plans. They might be mine, but I need to now see if they work in this changed external environment. So the other thing about even looking after people, I want to also share another example, Sindhu. If you look at the whole lockdown process and the workers migrating, if you look at typically a huge manufacturing company like construction companies, there were some companies which just shut shop and waited and said that let the government open the lockdown and we will see what to do from there. And then there were these very smart ones which said that I'm going to kind of change the way my employee welfare schemes are going to work. I'm going to invest a little more in
Sharda is having some network issues. Sharda, can you hear us? Okay, we'll wait for Sharda to get back. But in the meantime,
my employees. And yeah, was I audible?
We lost you for close to 10 seconds.
Yeah, so yeah, I think there might be some bandwidth issues, but I don't know if you heard the construction example.
Yeah.
Started off.
Yeah. So basically, I also, from an employee perspective or a workforce perspective, I remember the construction business, whereas a lot of companies in construction were waiting for for the workers to come back, or figuring out how to find alternate local laborers and things like that. And there were these companies who were very agile and who kind of went back to the drawing room and say, I'm going to change my labor force policies and make more investments into holding the workforce here. And I'm going to continue with my business as normal. And what happened to them was quarter on quarter through the pandemic, they continued to grow their business and make profits. So basically, their ability to be so agile to say that I'm going to shift things, I'm going to invest, I'm going to take this risk, and I'm going to kind of turn this around. Yeah. So how do we react or respond to an external environment? Bring it in and do the best for ourselves is all what a strategic leader will and should do.
Absolutely, Sharda. Responding versus reacting. And in both your examples of Amul as well as the construction company, it was more about judiciously taking that risk and not being shied away by the dynamic environment. So those two are really beautiful examples. And I'm tempted to ask Sushil this question. So in both the examples that Sharada gave, the focus was either on people or on strategy or on marketing. So question to you is, when it comes to strategic leadership, then what do you think are the different facets of the organization that leadership should focus on? Would it be on people? Would it be on operations? Would it be on marketing? Or would it be a combination?
So, Sindhu, for me, it is a combination. I cannot make segregation or can say, this is not part of a strategy or that is only part of a strategy, because finally, whatever you are planning to achieve, it is going to happen with your people. If people are not with you, if processes are not with you, if operations are not with you, then Vikas had started with alignment. So then alignment is not going to happen. If you see any of the scorecard, whether it is a strategy map, balance scorecard, it is aligned or linked in a sequential manner. Cause and effect relationship is there. It starts with learning capital, technology, your people, leadership, culture, values, skills, and then it creates a competitive advantage in your internal operations. So processes, how you are making your products, how you are offering services, how you are dealing with statutory bodies, then it gets translated into customer delight, customer centricity, customer happiness, retention, and then finally you get top line, bottom line. So it is a part of a sequence. So it is a part of a system. You cannot say your eyes are very beautiful, but skin is dark, or I am not against with any, that are referring any color, caste, creed. But beauty is a composite or holistic concept. Likewise, strategy is a holistic concept. So you have to always keep in your mind that it is a destination, which is only possible when you are carrying with your all resources, tangible, intangibles, everything. So that is one aspect. And second aspect, very important, which though it is not related with this question, but if you all permit, I will take this privilege, because like we discussed about detachment, you touched up on mindfulness, then empathy. These three important aspects you all discussed. And why I touched this, it is very important for audience also to understand. In spite of all discussion, leadership talk, this kind of webinars, in organization, in real sense, we are not able to increase the level of engagement, level of commitment, level of emotional intelligence. Because what I feel, concept and practical, both the aspects are not related. Like you talked about detachment. So I always feel and have even experienced, people always talk about कि साहब ओनर को हमारी तकलीफों के बारे में क्या मालूम. तो I always tell कि जाके पाँव न फटे बिवाई, वो क्या जाने पीर पर आई. So if you are completely detached from the problem, yes, you can be an observer, real drishta, you can be a pure soul, but you cannot be part of your people. People are not going to see you. They will not consider you as a part of your team. And that is very important to become a true strategic leader. If you want to be a strategic leader, if you want to create a strategic leader across the organization, starting from execution to top level, leader must be recognized a pure soul, 100% authentic person like Tata or Amul. So whatever I am telling, people must have faith.
Sushil, I think there is some network issue. Are you able to hear us?
Yeah, sorry for taking 1 minute extra.
That's okay, Sushil. Thank you. I like this authenticity part that you're talking about, and you made reference to the Tatas, one of the groups I really revere and respect them so much. Tata and Amul. We talk about authenticity, and I mean, I truly believe that trust gets created largely through authenticity. When people actually
Yeah.
see authentic leaders, they see in the intentions being pure, trust automatically gets created. Thank you very much. So I now have a rapid fire round for the panelists. Same question to be answered by the panelists. Who wants to go first?
I can go first, no problem.
Okay, Vikas. So what is that? You spoke about empathy. So leaving empathy, what is that one value strategic leaders will have to build in their organizations as a part of their culture? One value that you cannot do without.
Transparency.
Okay, wonderful. You want to explain maybe one line on that?
A lot of time what happens is, leadership typically decides some goals, and then you have different departments. Each has their own different departments. Each has their own different incentives and different way of working and different goals. And we tend to keep, sort of everything pertaining to one department to only that department only, right? We do not want to show what one department is doing to another department in the organization, right? I do think that creates a very, very big bottleneck in the ecosystem. The moment you are not transparent, I think that creates sort of a mistrust and always starts creating finger pointing and other sort of insecurities in the organization. And the moment you become transparent, wherein you have goals open for even all the leaders in the organization in front of everyone. For example, my goals are open to everyone, and same way goals for every department are open for everyone to see what they are trying to achieve. Automatically, people will start aligning, and if there is any disconnect, people will start pointing that out. And I think that's where you create a very sort of a collective culture. The moment you are transparent, the moment you start shutting down, sort of, or become opaque, you start sort of creating silos in the organization.
Okay, that's great. So transparency is one indispensable value. Thank you, Vikas. Sharda, how about you?
I would say governance.
Okay.
And by that, I mean that, strategic leaders today have to also focus on the concept of ESG, which is environment, social, and governance, which is become almost the most important thing that leaders across the world have to imbibe into their organizations and into their ethos. So I would think, how do you build governance into your company's ethos becomes another very important facet for a strategic leader.
Thank you. And yes, Sushil, same question to you.
So authenticity, because for me, leadership is a concept which is very much related with authenticity. Without authentic, nothing can happen in the system.
So I think I would probably say we'll have to tag strategic leadership, tag being transparent, being authentic, and having governance. I think there's a big takeaway for all of us here. Thank you very much. And we've got one question from Tushar from the audience. I'm just going to summarize Tushar's question. Tushar wants to know,
hi Sindhu, sorry to interrupt. Before we start Q&A, can we run the poll and capture the feedback?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
we can do that. Yeah, sure.
I'm requesting all the participants to please share your feedback. Yeah, we'll wait for a few seconds and we can start with the Q&A. Yeah, all right, we can start, Sindhu. Yeah.
Thank you very much. So yes, Tushar has a question. Tushar wants to know if there are any indicators that strategic leaders can use that could evaluate their approach, to say like a compass, are they going in the right direction, just to get a confirmation. Anyone who wants to address this question?
Me, again, I'll go back to customer centricity. So I mean, we always use NPS, Net Promoter Score, from the customers and from the employees for that.
All right, thank you, Vikas. Sharda and Sushil.
Yes, yeah. Tell me.
I think feedback mechanism internally works wonders. So a leader should not hesitate in taking feedback from his team, his mini leaders, to see how effective he is and what are the things that he could do better. Because I think more often than not, our assessments or what you call it, increment and promotion discussions are about asking the employees how they've done. It's seldom that the leaders are, put on the box and said that, hey, listen, how effective am I? What are the things I could do better? What are the things I could do so that we become collectively more successful? So I think that feedback, I believe, has always worked phenomenally well. It need not be a very, very formal kind of feedback mechanism, because people then tend to get a little, they only want to tell you the good things. So it's good to have a very, very informal kind of conversation where feedbacks can make you a better leader.
Thank you, Sharda. And Sushil.
Yes, Sindhu will give two answers, one formal and second informal. So yes, there are balance scorecard kind of review mechanism through which you can evaluate whether the milestones which were set against your strategic implementation execution is getting fulfilled or not. But second, informal, very powerful tool. I always use this tool, maybe on lighter mode also. You check with your people, starting from top to bottom level, whether they can elaborate your strategy, they can explain your vision, they can tell you exactly in literal word or maybe in their understanding perspective what is your values. So you just ask a simple question, even starting from your VP, they would not be able to tell you what exactly was their vision. So that is the best part. Yeah.
That's interesting, Sushil. Thank you so much. I really want to thank Vikas, Sharda, and Sushil for your nuggets of wisdom. It's been a fantastic discussion this afternoon, starting from understanding what the key traits of strategic leadership are, talking about embracing challenges, aligning to vision, continuous learning, or creating mini leaders like Sharada said, and coaching and building in a very customer-centric organization, which has to be a part of the mindset that Sushil said. We also spoke about how we can go about building this culture of strategic thinking, because largely spoke about empathy. And again, he drove about being a very customer-centric organization. We saw fantastic examples of Amul and the construction industry from Sharada. And of course, what Sushil spoke about is how can we all be authentic, pure leaders that the organization and the people of the organization can relate to. We spoke about values. So a great summary, at the risk of repetition, I would say it would be tagging strategic leadership with transparency, authenticity, and governance. I would also like to thank all the audience. Thank you so much. Thank you, Vikas, Sushil, Sharada. I hope to meet you all again. Thank you, HRAI and Nehali, for organizing this wonderful session. Over to you, Nehali.
Yeah, before that, let me also, thank Sindhu, my co-panelist, and HRAI for having us here, and had a fantastically, I think, mutually learning session today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, thank you so much, Sindhu, for moderating this session so well, beautiful, and also putting across your learnings, your experience. And thank you so much to all the panel members, Mr. Sushil, Vikash, and Ms. Sharda, for sharing your perspective, knowledge, your learnings, and with a lot of examples as well. So I'm sure like our audience is going to have a lot of takeaways from this session. Also, like whoever is not able to join today's session or wants to go through this session once again, you can find the recording of this session on the YouTube link, which has been shared in the chat window. Also, we would also like to thank all the association, which is Geisha, NASCOM COE, GlipTalk, Telgro, TLE, LinkedIn Local, Ahmedabad, and India for supporting HRAI events. To know more about this association, you can access the link which is shared in the chat window. Also, would like to invite for our next Connecting the Dot series on the topic work from home, comfort, concern, and cosigns on November 11th at 3 p.m. So requesting all the participants to join for this session. Invite for this particular session has been shared in the chat window. Till then, please stay safe, take care, but enjoy Diwali and New Year. Thank you so much for joining.
Thank you all. Happy Diwali.
Happy Diwali, everyone.
Happy Diwali. See you all. Stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.